Welcome to Eviliv, the live media commentary show that answers the question, how many cuts does it take to make a film good? Subscribe if you're new to the channel because today we are reviewing Rebel Moon, Part 1, the director's cut. It actually has a name, Chalice of Blood. It's actually called Chapter 1 in the director's cut, which is a little bit strange. So it started as Chapter 1, Child of Fire, and then they renamed it to Chapter 1, Chalice of Blood. Which, because there's more blood in it. And there is a lot more blood. So I reviewed this over at my Star Wars channel. Shout out to the Infernal Brotherhoods of the scruffy looking nerve herders. If you want to see Star Wars stuff, go on over there and other George Lucas property stuff. Here, I am talking about the director's cut. And so I don't really want to rehash everything that I talked about the first time, which was the show, but you can't not address that stuff, at least in part, when this is basically the same thing plus, so it's got a bunch of extra time tacked onto it. I think it's like 40 minutes or something like that. Like 160 was the last one. This is two something. So maybe it's less than that, but in either case, more content, more on-screen action, infinitely more blood and gore, and sex, nudity. Not a lot, but it's there. It's enough to make you go, why did they do that? Because if I'm being honest, I don't think it really served the look, I'm a fan. This is coming as a fan of sex. I like nudity. I just don't think it served a real purpose in this, especially the way it was portrayed. I'll get into all that here in just a second. Anyway, this is directed by Zack Snyder, screenplays by Zack Snyder, Kurt Johnstad, and Shay Hatton. The music's by Tom Holkborg, which I think is probably the best part of everything. And this is coming, I'm sort of coming off of this with the realization that I enjoyed a lot of Zack Snyder's previous work. And when I went into this initially, knowing that Rebel Moon was inspired by the works of Akira Kurosawa, the Star Wars films, which was also inspired by Kurosawa, heavy metal magazines, then I realized that, okay, well, he's not trying to do a Star Wars sci-fi project. He is taking story beats from Star Wars and Kurosawa, and he's actually doing a heavy metal film. And that explained everything I needed to know in order to accept Rebel Moon Part 1, or Chapter 1. And so I didn't hate on it because I knew it was meant to be like heavy metal, which is this sort of pulp sci-fi magazine that had like wild sex and violence and all sorts of crazy comic strips and stuff. And then ultimately they made a couple heavy metal films, which were fun for what they were. But Rebel Moon Part 1 reminded me very much of heavy metal. And so it totally made sense how he realized the world. And yes, you could clearly see the Kurosawa influence. You could clearly see the Star Wars influence, but it was its own thing. It was very different. And I have to sort of do these prefaces because no one likes this film or its sequel. It's so much so that I don't even think Netflix, while it was popular enough to drive audiences with the PG-13 versions, I don't think it had very much success with the rated R versions. And so I don't think they're going to greenlight the other films that he wants to tell in this continuing story, which this version of Part 1 and 2 really lean into, that there are other versions or other sequels that he wants to make. But let's talk about the logline, the actual film itself. So when a peaceful settlement on the edge of a distant moon finds itself threatened by a tyrannical ruling force, a stranger living among its villagers becomes their best hope for survival. Rebel Moon Chapter 1, Child of Fire is now Rebel Moon Chapter 1, Chalice of Blood. And it has a bunch of extra scenes in it, which actually do a really good job of contextualizing the characters specifically, but also making the world and the characters' actions believable. I think the work done with Kira and tons of fun. I'm trying to look for the dude. Gunner. Is it Gunner? I think it's Gunner. Who they end up becoming like a love thing. not in the first film, in the second film. But in this first film, it explains why they hook up and the connection that they have together. There's a lot of really like sort of small, endearing moments between them, which really go a long way to explain why she gives a damn about this village. And just her interactions with the different villagers on why she would want to help them was really fleshed out. And of course, her history with the Imperium and what she did and all of who she was raised by. And though it was in the first version of this first film, this director's cut goes to great lengths to contextualize it. And yes, it can feel a little bit much. It took me a couple sittings to get through it because it's just not that great. I'm going to be honest with you. But I did force myself to go through it because I wanted to be able to honestly say whether or not it was better, whether or not it made the first film better for me. And, on those first reviews, after having watched the first film and then watching the second one and reviewing them both, I didn't want to revisit this at all. And I'm still a little wary about whether I should even do this review as I'm actively giving the review, because I did not fully enjoy this. I just think it's better. The director's cut is better than the original cut of the film, the PG-13 version, and it does a better job of telling the story that I believe Zack Snyder wanted to originally tell. And again, lots more guts, lots more gore, lots more of all the stuff that makes Heavy Metal Magazine something to still look for if you've never explored it before. All those really great adult themes and sort of nonsense that goes along with sci-fi. So some of the extra differences here are the opening, primarily, is like dramatically different. It adds in tons of new scenes. So we have Admiral Noble traveling to a mysterious planet where he apprehends a royal family that has sheltered Darian Bloodaxe, who we actually see in the original cut, and his sister Devra. The duo have been carrying out a rebellion against the Imperium, the noble forces of the young Prince Aerys, in order to kill his father, promising that he'll spare his family. Now, Aerys doesn't want to kill his dad, obviously, but Admiral Noble tells him, look, if you don't kill your dad, I'm going to kill everyone. And the first thing that anyone should ever know about someone who's going to make a deal like that, they're not going to uphold their end of the bargain. They won't. The fact that he convinced a child, I actually believed, because kids don't usually understand that complexity of horrid, human nature. But those of us who are in the know, adults who have been hurt and wounded by life, we know he's lying. Of course he's going to kill them. He's a piece of shit bad guy. Like, he's definitely going to... You can look at him in the eye just by the face on his skull and know you're a piece of shit. 100%. And he is, and he does. So he murders the family anyway. And what that scene does is, again, beautifully contextualizes the bad guy as an unredeemable bad guy. We've always been fed a bunch of sci-fi stories throughout all of cinema that sometimes bad guys are misunderstood. And sometimes they're not really seeing themselves as bad guys. And sometimes they get redeemed. This guy is not one of those guys. Admiral Noble is a bad, bad human being, like evil, monstrous, vile human. And to start the entire director's cut with that, of him just doing this horrible thing, it perfectly set up the character for the choice that is going to be made at the end of, which is actually like the middle point of the last film, the second film, where he tries to make the same deal with Korra of saying, look, you come with me, and I'll let all these other people live. No, you won't. You're a lying, evil, vile piece of shit bad guy. We've been shown the type of person you are. So no, I don't believe you at all. You're a liar. Why Korra would go along with it, knowing what she knows about him and the things that he has done firsthand, it makes no sense that she would do that. But whatever. So that was a great scene, I thought. There's also a Curse of Forgiveness, offers an answer to some puzzle in the Scar Giver. Why does a ship that's capable of interstellar travel have to coal-burning furnaces? And it's really not the ship. It's what's powering the ship. And you can say, well, yeah, the engine, what's the big deal? Except that this is this massive robotic being known as Kali. And it's sort of alluded to that it's a goddess or one of the many gods or some sort of extra dimensional entity that is somehow captured or something like that. It's very sort of mysterious and I actually kind of think it's a cool element of this that we didn't really get a lot of information at all in the first version of this, but in this director's cut, it really adds a lot more to it. And I liked it a lot more because of that. I've always liked the idea of like these sort of like extra dimensional beings that appear godly to other civilizations, but really they're not, you know, and this very much seems in that vein for me at least. So it worked for me. But ultimately, the Imperium's technician leveraged Kali's power to not just travel through space and time, which is usually important in spacefaring situations. You know, otherwise it's going to be millennia before you get to your home planet, if you even survive to make it to this other planet. But also they use her to heal, which also explains why it takes so long for them to get back in the second episode, but also why it takes so long for shit-ass Admiral Noble McDickface to heal by it, because she'd already expended all of her power in order to jump them through space and time. And so I just like that sort of world building aspect of their technology that was not explained at all in the first one and was completely laid out through natural course of dialogue in this one. Even though I still think it's weird that they're shoveling coal and bones to power this extra dimensional entity, Kali, that's sort of enslaved to run the ship. Chalice of Blood also takes a different approach by showing and exploiting Velt while waxing poetic about Issa's mythical powers. He even helps the Velt community dig up Korra's old spaceship and kills a group of Hawkshaws. So the alien bounty hunters, I want to talk about them, the Hawkshaws as well. They looked like something out of CW. I just don't think the creature design in this series is very good in these two films. I don't know, is 2 films a series? I don't know what the definition is. All I know is it seems like a series anyway. So it just didn't feel right. The alien design was not believable. It looked really cheap. There's this really weird moment. I think it was actually in the second film where they were like peeking in on one of the young girls from Velt and the ex-Imperial soldier boy, and they're like kissing, and he's like, "Ooh, that's gross. They're pressing their mouths together." Urgh. And I guess it was just some sort of reference to, oh, he's an alien, so they must do things differently. But it landed as being like, yeah, this isn't the first time you've seen humans, I'm taking it, right? You know they do this, so why are you even commenting on it? It makes no sense at all. It's completely out of character and context. It's very strange. Anyway, but Velt itself, because of the inclusion of those sort of much more hypersexualized scenes that I'm not entirely sure you needed in the first film, they landed better in the second film. But in the first film, I just didn't think you really needed them that much. It did sort of make Velt feel more alive. And it's weird to say that because why would sex make a village feel more real? But it was so wholly absent from the first version of it, and it alluded to rape, but it didn't ever mention any sort of like actual loving intimacy. And so it almost felt hollow in the first version, whereas in this, while I didn't think it, again, that you needed it, it actually felt much more in universe and placed, grounded in this planet. Even though I still don't think the graphics really worked with that planet. So the major plot for Chalice of Blood and Curse of Forgiveness remains the same, where Korra gathers warriors from various planets to help defend Velt. But most of the extra scenes really are focusing on how the Imperium came to their planet. Tysus is killing Imperium soldiers. Nemesis has the necklace that belongs to her slain children. Milius came from a similar world to Velt and was sold into slavery. It really gives you extra information that it's not absolutely necessary, but it does, again, help round out characters. And so that's why I think this is a better version of the first film. The character who gets arguably the most development is Ayers, following his indoctrination into the Imperium. He turns his fellow soldiers, turns on them after they try to sexually assault Sam, one of Korra's friends. And Chalice of Blood actually shows one of the twisted rituals. Noble kills the planet leader, and scribes, they're sort of those red robed people are called scribes. They start like chanting, and one of them goes and rips out a tooth, and they're using the teeth as decoration to a frame of the lost princess. I say lost because in this one, more than the other one, it hints that she is not killed, even though they say that Korra killed her. It's that she's actually gone, like absent, so missing. And of course, that is the sort of the drop at the end of the original cut of the second film, and I'm sure it's going to be the same in the second one. I'm not finished with the second one yet. Again, these are a bit of a slog to get through, and I'm not really enjoying it that much, but I figured I'd say I'd review it, so I might as well review it. And Princess Issa feels like a much more important aspect to this version of the film as well. Something I didn't get really from the first viewing of the PG-13 version was that the current ruler, who was a general who raised Korra as Arthelius, I don't know. He like was demoted by the king and given a position in the Senate as a sign of respect, but like ripped away from the military leadership because he was such a tyrant and a piece of shit also. And while it probably mentioned it, I just never really landed for me in the first film. In the director's cut of the film, it really landed a lot harder for me. And I appreciate more that sequence, which is still really ridiculous, of Arthalis and the now king murdering the existing king and queen, and him trying to get her to murder the girl. It all just landed better in this version. But again, it's just not that good. And we also get more of the droid who is... where is the droid's name? There's got to be a name, right? I'm trying to look for the dude who played him in my notes. And for some reason, I'm having a hard time nailing him down. Anthony Hopkins, Jimmy. Yeah, how could you forget Jimmy? Jimmy feels more real in this version. I mean, in the first one, we got the context of the soldiers sort of kicking him around, and you sort of feel bad, like the droid's getting beat on, and then he goes and runs away. In this version of it, we get a lot more time with Jimmy, exploring nature, reflecting on events, feeling his place in the universe outside of being a weapon for the king. And I really appreciated it more because I really needed more from that character that I didn't get in the PG-13 version in either films. But I did get it in this one. And so, I really appreciated that aspect of it as well. So, Sophia Botella, who plays Korra Arthelius, she's okay. I'm not sure why they cast her. Hey, Chris, how you doing, man? I don't like heroin chic. I've never liked the look of someone that is emaciated and they look weak and starved. And every like hero and bad guy in this look emaciated and heroin chic. It doesn't make any sense. Like if you're an actor and you're going to be playing a superhero, they bulk you up, they work you out, then they dehydrate you so your skin sticks to your muscles so that you can see all the ripples in the muscles and it looks, super jacked and awesome. But it's wildly unhealthy. In this film, instead of beefing people up, they just have them completely emaciated so their skin naturally sucks to their muscles. You can even see in the actor playing Atticus Noble, his lips are like cracked and dry throughout the whole series of films because he's completely dehydrated. He's not a strong guy. He's not ripped in muscles. None of these people are. They're just dehydrated. And it looks horrible. It looks like they're all sick. And I don't think that was a world-building choice. I think they were just like, we don't really have time to have them bulk up and then drop, water weight. Let's just dehydrate them. They're already thin anyway. And that it drives me crazy. I hate the body type of heroin chic. It was super popular in the 70s and 80s, but it's healthy humans are what look good, not deathbed humans. And it's always bothered me. It always will bother me. And I don't understand why they do it on camera. I mean, they must think, oh, well, you can see muscles, so they must look healthy and strong. No, you see muscles and they look like a fucking skeleton. And it's not right. It looks horrible. It's always bothered me and it always will bother me. So stuff like that takes me completely out of the world and makes me look at these characters like, oh, they're I could walk in there and beat every single one of their asses because every single one of them is emaciated, dehydrated, and weak right now. They're going through the motions of their choreography, but any high school kid could beat the shit out of them because they're so weak. It's just the reality of, you know, the in order for the actors to look the way that they look on camera, they have to be weak, and it's so ridiculous and stupid, and it gives unhealthy body image ideas to the rest of the public. Like, oh, if that's what healthy is, then I must aspire to that. No, no, don't. You're gonna kill yourself. That's how people freaking die. Other than those, you know, sort of extra world building sequences and character building moments, it's largely the exact same film with nudity, gore, and sex. Um, and I think the violence and the gore and the blood really actually help this film be better. That sounds strange to say out loud, but it does actually make it feel more real somehow, especially more real to what it was emulating, which is heavy metal. I mean, heavy metal was very, very raw. And so seeing that version of this film makes it feel more in line with what it was meant to emulate and a more believable and more enjoyable experience watching. So I don't remember what rating I gave the original film. I'm not sure it was entirely too high. In this particular case, I'm going to give it 3 out of 5 evil eyes. This is a better version of the original Rebel Moon film, but it's not a good film. And it's not a good film, not because of the lack of world building or anything like that. It's not a very good film because it's like Zack Snyder flexing. Instead of Zack Snyder doing his damnedest to tell a good story, he is doing his tropiest camera movements ad nauseum. He's hyper sexualizing almost wheat, which is a weird choice to make. And I don't know. Ultimately, I just don't really enjoy the world that he's crafted after watching the film. I just, you know, it was one of those things where there's like a novel and there's a comic and it's all supposed to tie in together and help expand on the universe that he's building. And I just don't buy it. And I'm having a hard time getting through the second film because I just don't enjoy it. And that's frustrating to me because I loved Man of Steel. I loved Dawn of the Dead remake. I loved a lot of the films that he's done, especially the Justice League director's cut that he put out. I really loved that. I don't know. This is Zack Snyder masturbating into a mirror, and I don't want to watch that. So I will never revisit the director's cut or the non-director's cut of this film. And I probably won't remember it a couple months from now or ever reflect on it other than to think that wasn't very good. So, Chris, was the director's cut any better? Yeah, it was better. It was a lot better, but it's just not good enough, is all. You were disappointed by the original movie. The trailer looked so epic leading up to the movie. Yeah, it really did. And again, I don't know if you remember my view because I believe you saw or were part of the discussion of the review when Cameron and I were having it on the Infernal and Brotherhood channel. I actually liked this a little bit more than he did, the first one, because of its homage to heavy metal. Now, The Bloom Has Left a Rose, and it's got to be more than just that. You know, for it to, especially when you've had so much time to develop out a director's cut and include all of this extra footage and recut the film and make it a completely different vibe, which it's not really a different vibe, but it's more logical. is still not very good. And that's why I landed on the 3. So that's going to do it for this review. Let me know what you guys thought. I mean, if you watched the director's cut, did it feel better to you as a film? Is it something that you would revisit? And do you want to see any other films that are set in this universe after the second one? Let me know in the comments below. That's going to do it for this. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Always remember that evil spelled backwards is live. So get out there and be evil.